Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever wondered why you do the things you do? Like, why you react a certain way, why you make these instant snap judgments about total strangers, or why certain completely random memories keep you up at night? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're actually decoding the hidden drivers of the human mind. We're going to explore all those subconscious forces, the psychological triggers, and the weird neurological quirks that dictate your behavior every single day. Let's start right off the bat with a kind of jarring reality. Think about your fading, happy memories versus those deeply, incredibly vivid, embarrassing moments. Why is it that you can completely forget a beautiful, heartfelt compliment you got yesterday, but your brain evolutionarily obsesses over that one time you tripped in the cafeteria like a decade ago? It's called the negativity bias. Your brain is literally hardwired for survival. And historically, negative experiences, stuff like social rejection or embarrassment, well, they were seen as literal threats to your survival within a tribe. So your brain holds on to these super cringeworthy moments, not to torture you, even if it feels like it, but to protect you from making that same dangerous mistake again. Because of that, our brains are constantly running these invisible background programs around other people. It's what we can call the hidden social mask. Every single day, our social interactions are governed by these hidden triggers. For example, your brain judges someone within milliseconds of meeting them. Literally, before they even finish saying hello, you have already evaluated their trustworthiness, their status, and their competence. And what's crazy is these first impressions lock in incredibly fast, and they severely resist change. It takes an immense amount of contrary evidence to undo a bad first impression. Oh, and then there's the halo effect. If someone has an attractive face, our brain just automatically assumes they're also kind, smart, and trustworthy. We blindly project positive traits onto them based entirely on their looks. It's just a mental shortcut, but it heavily shapes our social reality. And these internal biases actually leak right out into our physical movements, dictating the whole psychology of attraction and body language. First up is eye contact. It's an incredibly fast way to build trust because it signals undivided attention. Next is mirroring. Have you ever noticed yourself crossing your arms right after the person you're talking to does? That is the work of mirror neurons in your brain, driving copycat posture to subconsciously build rapport. It's basically your brain's way of saying, hey, we're alike, you can completely trust me. And finally, confidence. Sheer confidence acts as a massive social magnet. When someone is just entirely comfortable in their own skin, our brains perceive them as highly attractive, because confidence historically signals competence and safety. But get this, we don't just mirror physical movements, we literally catch feelings. This brings us to a really fascinating concept called emotional contagion. It's the phenomenon where we unconsciously mimic and synchronize our emotions with the people around us. If you walk into a room full of panicked, stressed out people, your own cortisol levels will physically start to spike. But here's the empowering part. That feedback loop goes both ways. Just as you catch emotions, your physical expressions can dictate your internal state. If you're having a terrible day, the simple act of forcing yourself to smile, just activating those specific facial muscles, can actually trick your brain into releasing dopamine and serotonin, which genuinely changes your mood. So, our brains are powerful, right? But they are also exceptionally good at deceiving us. Let's look at why your mind traps you. Because to protect our fragile egos, our brains actively construct comfortable illusions. Here is exactly how your brain lies to you on a daily basis. First, confirmation bias. We actively ignore facts that prove us wrong, and we only seek out information that proves us right. Next is cognitive dissonance. When we hold two conflicting beliefs or our actions just don't match our values, it creates this deep psychological pain. And to fix it, our brain just invents a justification to make us feel better. Then we have the relentless drive for social approval. We are deeply social creatures, so that directly fuels the fear of missing out, or FOMO. Seeing a party on social media that you weren't invited to, that actually triggers the exact same neurological pain pathways in your brain as a physical injury. Ouch. Now, what's really interesting about this is something called the Zeigarnik effect. This is our tendency to remember interrupted or incomplete tasks far better than completed ones. And this perfectly explains why unresolved arguments, unanswered texts, or that one project you left half-finished loop endlessly in your mind. Your brain absolutely hates a cliffhanger. Once a task is done, the brain clears it from the cache. But if it's incomplete, it leaves an open loop, basically holding your mental bandwidth hostage. Which leads us to a highly relatable question. Why on earth do we overthink so much at night? Why does all of this mental clutter suddenly hit us the exact moment our head touches the pillow? Well, during the day, you're constantly bombarded with distractions, right? Work, your phone, traffic. Your brain is just too busy processing external stuff to focus on internal anxieties. But the second you lie down in the dark, those daytime distractions just vanish. The sudden quiet forces your vulnerable, exhausted brain to finally process all those unresolved thoughts. And when that happens, welcome to the domain of the inner midnight critic. In the total absence of light and noise, our brain amplifies our insecurities, replaying and magnifying every single perceived misstep from our day. This is one of the biggest reasons that inner critic is just so loud. We constantly feel like everyone is staring at our mistakes, when the reality is, no one actually noticed at all. Imagine walking into a party and you spill a drop of water on your shirt. You spend the whole night hiding in the corner, convinced everyone is judging you. This is known as the spotlight effect. We falsely believe everyone is scrutinizing us, when in reality, they are completely absorbed in their own worlds, probably worrying about their own spilled water. You are the center of your universe, for sure, but you're barely a blip in theirs. Speaking of uncomfortable social moments, why does silence make us panic? Think about an awkward silence on a first date or in an elevator with a total stranger. We scramble to fill it with literally any words, even meaningless small talk. We do this because humans are socially wired to find sudden silence deeply, deeply uncomfortable. Way back in our tribal days, sudden silence signaled one of two things. Either a predator was nearby, or you had committed a major social faux pas and were being rejected by the group. So today, our brains still interpret a break in the conversational flow as a literal evolutionary threat. So we've seen how our minds trap us socially and emotionally. But what happens when our brains stop us from moving forward altogether? Let's shift gears and look at the science of inaction. It all starts with decision fatigue. This is when your brain literally runs out of willpower to choose. Willpower isn't just a personality trait, it's a finite cognitive resource. Every single choice you make, from what to eat for breakfast to drafting a complex work email, burns glucose in your brain. By the end of the day, your brain is physically drained. And this is exactly why procrastination isn't actually about laziness. Procrastination is a stressed brain trying to regulate emotional overwhelm. When a task feels way too mentally taxing, a fatigued brain opts for the immediate relief of scrolling social media rather than the long-term reward of actually finishing the work. And this brilliantly illustrates how we actually form habits. To overcome that fatigue, your brain relies on 3 steps: the trigger, the routine action, and the neurological reward. Because your brain wants to conserve its precious energy, it actively tries to turn conscious, difficult effort into an automatic, mindless habit. First, you have a trigger, like your morning alarm. Then the routine action, like making a cup of coffee. Finally, the neurological reward, that sweet caffeine hit. Once this loop is cemented, the brain essentially powers down during the activity and just lets the habit run on autopilot. Okay, we've decoded body language, the inner critic, and daily habits. But I have one last psychological mechanism to reveal. Consider this our cinematic climax, the final mental illusion. And it dictates how you remember nearly every event in your life. There's a famous quote, "We judge an experience entirely by its peak and how it ends." This is the peak end rule. Our brains do not remember an experience like a continuous movie tape. Instead, they just take 2 snapshots, the most intense emotional moment, the peak, and the final moments of the experience, the end. Like if you go on a week-long vacation and it rains for 5 straight days, but on the very last day you find a stunning, hidden beach and have a phenomenal dinner, your brain will file the whole trip away as absolutely amazing. And well, I have a clever confession to make. The memorable high-energy ending of this very explainer is psychologically designed using the peak end rule to make sure this information sticks in your memory long after you leave. So the next time you feel a sudden burst of anxiety in a quiet room or obsess over a fading memory, ask yourself, is this reality or is this just my brain running its ancient programming?